They thought I'd stay quiet forever. Until a $900,000 inheritance turned me into the one person they should. They never tried to cross. They tried to steal her inheritance. They always mistook my silence for surrender. My name is Charlotte Tion. I'm 32. And until recently, I was the one everyone expected to fade into the background when things got uncomfortable, the soft-spoken placeholder in a family of louder ambitions. I was the one who didn't stir conflict, who filled in the cracks others left behind. But then my grandparents died, first my grandmother, then a year later, my grandfather, and with their passing came an inheritance that shifted everything. The house, the investments, the savings, nearly $900,000 worth, all of it left to me. And just like that, I stopped playing the fool. I didn't lash out. I didn't argue. I simply started watching. Listening. Planning. Because I knew the people I was dealing with, and blood doesn't always make family. Roger, my younger brother by 3 years, had always been the golden boy in denial. Loud, magnetic, full of borrowed charm and borrowed cash. He could scam a stranger with a handshake and leave them thanking him for the privilege. Credit cards in our mother's name, a leased car that disappeared, countless promises that evaporated the moment the dust settled. And through it all, Mom treated him like a misguided prince. He's just figuring it out, she'd say, like the world owed him time. Meanwhile, I was the fallback. The reliable one. The family's emergency parachute. But when Grandpa's will named me, and only me, as the sole heir, I didn't feel shock. I felt clarity. I had earned it. Every late-night hospital run, every form filled out, every grocery bag carried up their creaking steps, I did it all while Roger was off chasing parties and likes. He showed up only when there was a camera to smile for, and disappeared just as fast. So when the lawyer read the will, and my name stood alone, I wasn't surprised. But Mom's face, the way her lips tightened into a thin, bitter line, that expression stayed with me. Not grief. Not even disbelief. Just quiet, simmering entitlement. As if I had stolen something meant for her prodigal son. That was the moment I felt it, the undercurrent shifting. The house was the crown jewel. A sprawling Victorian of blood-red brick and towering windows, cloaked in ivy that climbed like it had a mind of its own. It had survived 3 generations untouched, a relic of another era nestled in a neighborhood now overrun with glass boxes and polished facades. Developers had circled for years, waiting for the old couple to give in. They never did. Now, it was mine. I didn't move in. Not right away. I kept my apartment across town and got to work. Quietly. Deliberately. I brought in an appraiser. Consulted a trust attorney. Transferred assets, locked down deeds, rewrote the future under a different name, mine. Everything, down to the light bill, now ran through an irrevocable trust. No loopholes. No shared claims. Just clean lines and iron walls. I didn't tell anyone. Let them believe I was naive. Let them talk behind my back, assume I was overwhelmed, underprepared. That was the advantage of being underestimated, no one sees you coming. Roger sent a few texts. Can I use the pool this weekend? The house doesn't even have a pool. Mom began dropping veiled complaints during awkward phone calls. It just seems a bit unusual, she mused one night. I mean, your grandfather always adored Roger. Surely he meant to include both of you. I smiled and said nothing. But then came the shift. A month ago, Roger's social media turned cryptic. Posts about major changes and new beginnings. Hashtags that hinted at windfalls and vague promises. I ignored it. Until one Saturday. I was at the house trimming the hedges, sweat stinging my eyes under the mid-morning sun, when I heard the unmistakable purr of Mom's sedan pull into the driveway. Tires kissed gravel. Doors clicked open. Roger stepped out first, grinning behind mirrored sunglasses, dressed like a man auditioning for a role in his own life. Mom followed close behind, clipboard in hand, lips pressed in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Morning," Roger called, his voice sugar-dipped and smug. He clapped a hand on my shoulder like we were buddies meeting for brunch. "Got some updates for you." I let the rake fall. "We?" Mom took a step forward. "We spoke with a legal advisor," she said, her tone edged with rehearsed concern. "It seems your grandfather overlooked something. Technically, the estate should have been divided. He just didn't amend the will after your grandmother died." She gave a sympathetic shrug, as if she'd come to deliver a helpful correction, not to rewrite history. "But don't worry," she added, brushing a speck of lint from her sleeve, "we've taken the necessary steps." For a moment, I said nothing. Roger adjusted his sunglasses, peering toward the house like it already belonged to him. And I felt the air change, thick with pretense, laced with expectation. They thought I'd be cornered. That I'd flinch. That the agreeable older brother would nod and make room. But they had miscalculated. The quiet ones, after all, are the ones worth fearing. I stared at her, letting the silence stretch like wire pulled taut. "Handled what, exactly?" Roger flashed a smug grin, reaching into his back pocket and unfolding a piece of paper like he was revealing a winning lottery ticket. "Title's in my name now," he said, voice syrupy with triumph. "All done. Signed, sealed, transferred. You'll want to start packing, we're giving you until Friday. No hard feelings, though. We're not monsters." My gaze drifted between the two of them, their postures puffed with self-satisfaction, faces lit with the kind of pride that only ignorance can inflate. And for a fleeting second, I felt the absurdity of it all press against my ribs like laughter begging to break free. But I didn't laugh. Instead, I smiled, just slightly. The kind of smile that carries quiet danger. The kind that makes liars wonder if they've miscalculated. "You honestly believe I'd let that happen?" I asked softly. Roger chuckled, mistaking my calm for denial. "It's already happening, man. You've been living in that fairy tale too long. This is real life." Mom's voice slipped in next, wrapped in artificial warmth. She softened her expression the way she used to when trying to talk me out of my own convictions. "It's not personal, Charlotte Tion. This is just logical. Roger can manage the property, maybe flip it. You have your own place, don't you? This way, it's fair. Everyone gets something." I didn't argue. I just nodded slowly, once. "Got it," I said. That was all. 2 days later, they returned, bold as brass, in a rented moving truck with 2 strangers in tow. The truck wheezed into the driveway like a beast that didn't know it was headed for slaughter. Roger sat in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, coffee in hand, grinning like a man walking into his birthday party. Mom stood out front directing the movers like she'd rehearsed the role of project manager in a mirror. But then they saw the porch. I was already there. Arms folded, posture relaxed, a man beside me in a sharp navy suit holding a thick leather-bound folder. His badge gleamed on his belt, official, unmistakable. The seal on the folder bore a name they'd never heard before. My name, hidden behind layers of quiet preparation. The man beside me didn't look like someone they could talk circles around. They froze. Roger stepped out first, confusion crawling across his face like a shadow. "What's this?" he asked, already bristling. I said nothing. I didn't have to. The man next to me spoke. He cleared his throat, his voice cool and clipped, the kind of tone that leaves no room for negotiation. "Are you Roger?" Roger hesitated, his swagger cracking. "Yeah. Who's asking?" The man took a step forward. "Terry. County Office of Property Records. I'm here representing the legal trustee of the East Bramble Hill estate." He gestured behind him toward the house, now glowing in the morning light like a silent witness. "We have documentation confirming that the deed has been held in trust since April of last year. The property is not registered under your name, nor could it be. Any attempted title transfer filed since that date is not only invalid, but constitutes criminal fraud. Roger blinked. The color drained from his cheeks. Fraudulent, he echoed, voice a notch too high, eyes swinging toward Mom. What the hell is he talking about? Mom stepped forward, composure cracking just slightly at the edges. There must be a misunderstanding. We found the old deed. It still had your grandfather's name on it. We assumed. You assumed wrong, I said, my voice quiet but heavy, like the sound of a closing door. The property hasn't been in my name for over a year. I placed it in an irrevocable trust, the kind that doesn't show up in basic searches. You didn't think I was paying attention? You think I didn't plan for this? They stared, blinking. You went to a backroom title service, I continued, and tried to file a transfer based on an outdated document. A forgery, by definition. Mr. Lavin nodded. We've already flagged the attempted transfer. In most cases, we'd send a formal warning first. But given the current situation, unauthorized movers, attempted eviction of the legal trustee, and breach of private property, we're skipping directly to enforcement. Roger's voice cracked. Enforcement? I turned my head just slightly toward him, locking eyes. It means if you step on this property again without my explicit permission, it's trespassing. If you so much as try to access the trust or any of its assets, I let the pause linger just long enough for the weight to settle. You're looking at multiple charges. Civil and criminal. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His jaw worked silently, eyes flickering between me and the suited man at my side. For the first time in a very long time, Roger looked small. And I didn't feel triumphant. I felt cold. Hollow. Like a lock finally clicking shut on a door I'd been holding closed for too many years. Let them taste consequence. I wasn't their fallback anymore. For one long, loaded second, everything froze. No one spoke. Not Mom. Not Roger. Not even the two hired movers, who stood awkwardly halfway between the truck and the porch, caught in the crossfire of a family implosion they clearly wanted no part of. One of them gave a nervous cough, glanced at his partner, then slowly began inching backward toward the van like a man realizing he'd stepped into a minefield barefoot. Then Roger found his voice. You're really doing this, he said, his tone disbelieving. To your own family? My answer came low and calm, too calm. Family? I echoed, as if tasting the word for the first time. You came here with a forged title and a moving crew. You tried to steal the one place Grandma and Grandpa meant for me. Don't stand on my porch and lecture me about family. Mom's jaw tightened. Her hands curled at her sides, tension leaking from every inch of her posture. They were confused, Charlotte Tion, she said, trying for a softer angle. They didn't understand how. No, I cut in, my voice sudden, sharper than I meant, but no less true. You didn't understand. You thought I hadn't changed. You thought I was still that kid you could guilt into covering for Roger's disasters. The one who gave up weekends to clean up messes he left behind. Who signed checks because you said you just needed help this one time. I shook my head, barely able to look at her. I'm not that kid anymore. I paid attention. I listened. And I prepared. Beside me, Mr. Lavin cleared his throat and casually flipped another page in his folder. Just to be absolutely clear, he said, his tone clipped and clinical, the local precinct has already been notified. If either of you returns to this property under any pretense of claim, a civil and criminal file is ready to be activated. Roger's eyes narrowed. His jaw clenched. But whatever was on the tip of his tongue never made it out. He turned with a quick snap of his head and barked at the movers, "We're done here. Let's go." He never looked at me again. Mom lingered a moment longer. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something, maybe one last attempt to twist the narrative, a final plea or manipulation dressed as concern, but the words wouldn't come. She turned and followed her son down the steps without a sound. The truck's engine coughed to life, reversed down the gravel drive, and disappeared into the trees at the foot of the hill. And just like that, it was quiet again. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, the kind that feels like the aftermath of a storm you've seen coming your whole life. A silence not of relief, but of recognition. Mr. Lavin handed me a sealed copy of the fraud report. "Call if they come back," he said simply. I nodded my thanks, and after his car rolled away down the road, I just stood there. Same porch. Same boards Grandpa used to sand by hand every spring. Same steps where I'd sit as a teenager while he talked to me in that slow, thoughtful way of his, about people, about patterns. About reading beneath the words. Don't judge people by what they say when they want something, he used to tell me. Judge them by what they do when they think you're not looking. He was right. I had watched. I had waited. And finally, I'd acted. But I should have known it wasn't over. 3 days later, it came in the mail. A letter, typed, formal, on the letterhead of some downtown legal firm I didn't recognize. The signature at the bottom, not Roger's. Hers. My mother had hired her own lawyer. The letter was clean, professional, and audacious. It claimed emotional distress and argued that, as a direct blood relative, she had a moral and familial entitlement to a share of the estate. It demanded reparations, not requests, not conversation. Demands. $150,000 in cash. Joint ownership of the house. A monthly allowance, indefinite, as needed. For a moment, I didn't feel anything. I just sat at my desk, the paper in my hands, reading it again and again, trying to find a seam in the madness that would make it make sense. The first time through, I told myself I misunderstood. That it wasn't as malicious as it looked. That maybe she'd been pressured. That maybe it was just badly worded. By the 6th reading, I stopped lying to myself. She wasn't confused. She wasn't heartbroken. She was trying to cash in. Not even out of necessity. Out of habit. Out of some deep-rooted belief that I was still her safety net. That if Roger couldn't shake the tree, she'd do it herself, with stationery and signatures and veiled threats buried in lawyer speak. And the phrase that clung to the back of my throat like acid was familial obligation, as if I'd been born owing them. As if love and loyalty were a one-way transaction. As if the only role left for me was to keep giving until there was nothing left. I didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. I just set the letter down and let the silence settle around me like smoke. Then I picked up the phone. I called Mr. Lavin first. He listened without interruption, then gave me a name. Sarah. Estate attorney. Mid-40s. Understated. Sharp as cut glass. The kind of professional who didn't bluff, because she never had to. I scheduled a meeting. If my mother wanted this to be a battle, I would give her one. But not the one she was expecting. I handed Sarah everything. The trust documents. The cease and desist letter. Screenshots of Roger's obnoxious next chapter posts, his little Instagram parade of delusion. Every piece of evidence I had, I gave her. No embellishment. No filter. Just the raw truth. By the next morning, Sarah had filed formal cease and desist notices addressed to both Roger and my mother. No polite phrasing. No ambiguity. The message was absolute. The trust was legally impenetrable. The estate was shielded. And they had no claim. But Sarah didn't stop there. She began to peel back layers, meticulously, surgically, and it didn't take long before something ugly surfaced. Roger, in his infinite arrogance, had forged multiple signatures in his attempt to seize the property. He'd used a counterfeit notary stamp and submitted the paperwork through a dodgy online registry in another state, banking on the assumption that local property records wouldn't cross-reference. He'd gambled on bureaucracy. And lost. Sarah quietly looped in a fraud investigator tied to the district attorney's office. As it turned out, they were already piloguing that same registry in connection to several forged filings. Roger had just volunteered himself as the easiest target in the stack. And I hadn't told him a thing. I figured if they wanted to keep pushing, I'd let them keep shoveling. Let them dig. And dig they did. 2 weeks after Sarah's cease and desist landed in their inboxes, another letter arrived. No legal letterhead this time. No signature from some distant law office. Just a typed page in a plain envelope, but I recognized the voice instantly. It was my mother. The tone dripped with weaponized nostalgia, half accusation, half wounded matriarch. Her sentences curled around familiar guilt tactics. After everything I've done for you, you were always the quiet one, I raised you better than this. She ended with a classic. This can all be resolved if you just do the right thing. Family shouldn't need lawyers to settle what love and understanding can fix. I didn't respond. Sarah told me not to. Every word they write, she said, builds your case. I forwarded her the letter. She added it to the growing file. And then, of course, came the final insult, wrapped not in legal jargon, but in teenage pettiness. One morning, I found a folded flyer wedged into the front door handle. No envelope. No name. Just jammed there like a passive-aggressive calling card. The handwriting was unmistakable. Roger. The note read. Hope you're enjoying your little kingdom. Just don't forget who's really got your back when the money runs dry. I didn't laugh out loud. There was no cathartic release. Just a quiet, tired exhale, the kind that escapes when you realize someone still believes they have power over you, even as they're standing knee-deep in the consequences of their own choices. I scanned the note. Filed it. But in that moment, I made a decision. I was done playing defense. It was time to go on the offensive. Roger was already on the radar for real estate fraud. But Sarah pointed out something that shifted the equation entirely. If we could prove ongoing harassment or malicious intent, we could escalate it into a broader legal strategy, one that didn't just protect the estate, but exposed him fully. Civil charges. Professional consequences. And the one place he wasn't expecting a strike. His job. He'd recently landed a position at a boutique real estate firm, one of those places more focused on aesthetic branding than actual compliance. Their website boasted values like ethical property stewardship and transparent client relations. The irony was exquisite. So I started digging. Nothing reckless. Nothing rash. Just careful research. And the more I found, the more I wondered. Would they still be proud of their newest hire if they knew he had attempted to steal a home with forged documents and a fake notary seal? I didn't move yet. I waited. But then, something I didn't expect happened. Out of the blue, I got a Facebook message from Martha, my cousin. We hadn't spoken in years. She'd always been the sharp one in the family. No drama, no games. Just blunt honesty. Hey, can we talk? Your mom's been calling people. Saying stuff. Thought you should know. We met the next morning for coffee. She came prepared. Screenshots. Voicemails. Group chat logs. Apparently, my mother had begun reaching out to extended family, spinning a new narrative, one poison drop at a time. She claimed I had manipulated our grandfather in his final years. That I'd pressured him into rewriting the will while he was mentally frail. That I'd isolated him. Controlled him. Maybe even harmed him. It wasn't subtle. It was an orchestrated character assassination, framed as concern. And it was spreading. I sat across from Martha, hands cold around my coffee cup, stomach twisted with something colder than rage. Not shock. Not even sadness. Just the sickening weight of understanding. She hadn't just tried to take the house. She was trying to erase my character, brick by brick, until there was nothing left to stand on but the version of me she needed people to believe. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding in my throat. This wasn't over. It had never been just about money. It was about control. About rewriting the story. But if she wanted a war of narratives, I had my own to tell, and mine came with evidence. I felt it like a sickness. Not fear. Not even anger, not at first. Just a cold, crawling nausea that settled deep in my stomach, the kind that tells you something precious is being twisted out of shape while you're still trying to hold it together. That was when it finally clicked. This wasn't about the house. It wasn't about the money. Not even about Roger. This was about control. My mother couldn't bear the idea that I'd said no, that I'd kept something beyond her reach. That I had drawn a line and stood behind it. So now, she was going to burn everything she could touch. Martha sat across from me, coffee cooling between us, her face tight with concern. "I don't believe her," she said quietly. "Neither do Jessie or Charlotte. But she's not going to stop. She's calling everyone." I nodded, pulse climbing in my throat. "Thanks for telling me." That night, sleep never came. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every thought running in loops, not about what they'd done, but what they might still do. If my mother was willing to rewrite history to suit her narrative, then I had to be willing to end this. Not out of revenge. Out of necessity. Out of self-preservation. Because it was clear now, if I didn't finish this, she would never stop. And neither would Roger. For the next 2 days, I worked alone in the study. The legal structure was solid. The trust airtight. On paper, I was untouchable. But paper only went so far. The real damage was spreading in whispers, texts from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, just checking in. Hope everything's okay. Heard some stuff." Some messages were clumsy. Others calculated. But all of them pointed to the same truth: she was poisoning the well. This wasn't a legal battle anymore. It was reputational warfare. And I knew exactly how it would play out. First, the guilt. Then the pressure. Then the calls for me to be the bigger person, to make peace, to just let it go for the sake of family. I could see the trap she was building. So I built one of my own. With Sarah's help, I prepared a formal legal declaration, a full account of the entire ordeal, laid out cleanly and meticulously, every accusation supported by concrete evidence. We included the forged title transfer, the counterfeit notary stamp, letters from their lawyer, the cease and desist orders, screenshots of Roger's posts, voicemails where my mother called me a selfish manipulator, the demand letter for $150,000, screenshots from Martha showing the smear campaign. But I didn't file it quietly into a court drawer and wait. I went direct. I rewrote the story they were trying to twist, and sent it to every single relative who had been called, texted, whispered to. 27 contacts. The message was short. No bitterness. No theatrics. "Hi. I know there have been rumors and stories going around. Before you make up your mind, I want you to have the truth, not from hearsay, but from documents and facts. Everything is attached here. After this, I won't be discussing it further. If you believe me, great. If you don't, that's your decision. But at least now, you'll be making it with the full story in front of you. Charlotte Tion." Then I clicked send. And waited. The response came faster than I expected. Within hours, 5 relatives, people I hadn't heard from in years, replied. Some were stunned. Most apologetic. A few were visibly shaken. That night, my Aunt Logan called me in tears. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear, Charlotte Tion. I didn't know what they'd done. I believed your mother. I thought you were just being difficult. But now? I saw the papers. The proof. I'm so sorry. I didn't ask for apologies. I told her the truth. I just wanted someone to understand why I did what I did. But not everyone saw it that way." 3 relatives, all from my mother's orbit, doubled down. Claimed I was manipulating the narrative. One even suggested I had forged the documents myself. I knew I wouldn't win them all. But for every voice of doubt, 5 more stood up and said, "Thank you for telling the truth." And then came the move I'd been holding. Roger. He was still employed at a boutique real estate firm, the kind with sleek social media feeds and cheesy slogans about trust and integrity. They claimed to vet all employees thoroughly. So I submitted a tip through their internal ethics portal. No emotion. No accusations. Just the facts, neatly compiled in a PDF dossier, labeled and indexed like a courtroom exhibit. Included were evidence of the attempted property theft, the falsified notary and fraudulent title application, a breakdown of how he attempted to use his position to execute the scam. I didn't sign my name. At first. I assumed it might take a week. Maybe longer. But things were already moving. Faster than I expected. It took 2 days. By the end of the week, Roger's name had quietly vanished from his company's website, no statement, no farewell post, just deleted like he was never there. A contact of mine, someone I'd gone to college with who now worked in compliance at the local real estate board, reached out. They didn't hesitate, she said. The moment that report came in, they launched an audit. And what they found? Worse than I expected. Roger's records were sloppy. Inconsistent. Several of his client files had red flags, unverified signatures, timeline discrepancies, missing documents. His flashy closer image was built on smoke and shortcuts. They didn't just fire him. They reported him. His license was suspended, pending a full investigation by the state board. That afternoon, my phone lit up, over and over. 11 missed calls from Roger. I didn't pick up. Not once. He didn't leave a voicemail. That weekend, I checked his Instagram. He'd posted a black screen with white text over it. Some people will destroy your life and still call themselves the hero. He didn't tag me. He didn't have to. Everyone who mattered already knew the truth. But the story wasn't finished. 2 days later, I received an official envelope from the county office. A legal notice. A warrant was being issued. Roger's forged title submission hadn't just caused headaches, it had triggered formal charges. Attempted property fraud. Filing falsified documents with a government agency. I stared at the letter, my hand motionless, a strange numbness washing through me. Not satisfaction. Not vengeance. Just the cold clarity of consequence. This wasn't the ending I wanted. I never set out to ruin him. I didn't want courtrooms or lawyers or fingerprints on record. But he'd made his choices. And now the law was catching up. The arraignment was quiet. No press, no drama. Just a date on the docket, a defense attorney he couldn't afford, and a series of charges that would hang over his life like fog. He wouldn't go to prison. Probation, likely. Maybe restitution. Community service if he was lucky. But the record would stay. And next time he tried to reinvent himself as a polished real estate entrepreneur, the cracks would show. The past would follow him like an unpaid debt. As for my mother? She disappeared into silence. No more letters. No texts. No sideways attempts at reconciliation or guilt-tripping. Just, nothing. Then, 2 months later, I received a letter. Not from her attorney. A sterile document. Short. Formal. She was withdrawing all pending claims against the estate. The final line read: "Our client respectfully requests no further contact." Translation: she lost. And she knew it. I didn't smile. I didn't pop champagne. I just stood there in the foyer, holding the letter in one hand, the other braced on the doorframe, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Peace. That night, I returned to the house. The old Victorian, still quiet, still waiting. I left my shoes at the door and walked the floors barefoot, the wood warm under my feet, the air tinged with cedar and dust and memory. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a heartbeat. I wandered through each room slowly, pausing in the den, the same room where Grandpa used to sit, reading the morning paper in that oversized leather chair, sunlight pouring through the tall windows. I stood where he used to sit, closed my eyes, and whispered. I kept it safe. Just like I promised. And for the first time I believed he would be proud. In the end, it wasn't just about winning. It was about protecting something sacred. Something no one else had cared enough to fight for. I didn't just keep the house. I kept my dignity. I kept my name. I kept my future. Roger lost his career. My mother lost her narrative. And I gained something neither of them ever saw coming. The strength to stop being their victim. The voice they always ignored. The backbone they never thought I had. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet one anymore.